We are live talking about solidarity, the Date Cuenta movement, and men who are fearful, me being one of them. Here tonight we'll be covering a lot of different things and then diving into the editing of I Scream For You, the Dispensable Life of Vicente Cajero, here on the blog by Vincent Carleton. If you find you enjoy what you're watching, or you're just interested in the polymath discipline of learning, please feel free to subscribe and click like if you enjoyed the video that you're watching this evening as we go through. We're talking about solidarity. I'm going to read you the definition for the sake of having it clearly defined. Okay? Solidarity is unity or agreement of feeling or action, especially among individuals with a common interest, mutual support within a group. Okay, so that's the overall theme we're talking about, starting right now. I'm checking for chop. We don't have any chop in the audio, which is good news. I wanted to give some examples. This evening, I've been contributing quite a bit of time to the Facebook group Foreigners in Mexico City tonight. Largely because there was a gentleman, I believe a Russian gentleman, who was asking about where his place was in the feminist march that would be happening on Sunday in Mexico City. As the comments followed, I felt rather sick. Some of the comments from females commenting said, "Your place is at home, you better, stay at home. Stay the fuck away from here. Stay in your own fucking house," that kind of thing. And I thought to myself, wow, okay. What is the purpose of this? Is the purpose of this to be violent? To be destructive towards one another? When you look at the true definition of feminism, it is to reach a point of egalitarianism. Same thing with masculism. Dare I even say the word? It's to reach a point of gender equality and overall equality as a human species. There is this movement that's going on in Mexico City that I want to bring to everyone's attention. It's called #DateCuenta, which is pay attention. Pay attention. And I've been paying close attention to this movement and reading the different posters and announcements going on and advertisements, especially within the public transit system, since I use it just about every day. And I've seen a number of different expressions, all targeting men. It's pretty interesting. We're going to go into that Monday in a second, but this thing, chiflarle no es halago, es violencia. What this means is to whistle at someone. It isn't being complimentary. It's violence. And it says, amongst everyone, stop the violence against women. Pay attention. Date cuenta. I can tell you that I've been whistled at by men. Beyond being whistled at by men, I can tell you an experience, and so sometimes I'm whistled at by men. It could be because they're trying to be affectionate. So a homosexual trying to be affectionate towards me. I've also been whistled at as a form of signaling to other men that this could potentially be someone you could rob. Being a foreigner in Mexico City, walking through La Merced, or another area which would be considered pretty dangerous, where if I were to be walking through, which I have. But I'll tell you more specifically about an experience I had last night, which was very profoundly horrible. I went into the public transit system, and it was a packed train. I sat down in a seat because one was available, and a man proceeded to come and stand right in front of me, and he was pushing his crotch into my face and was making the following sound. And he kept making that sucking sound for about 5 minutes while shoving his crotch in my face, until finally I looked up and established eye contact with him. He stopped making the sound, and I stood. And I looked at him, and he walked away. And he stopped making the sound. But I was exposed to this for close to 5 minutes, where my head was just down in shame and fear, wondering what was going to happen next, waiting for him to do something, like maybe pull out his cock, or maybe hit me in the head, or maybe hit me with a knife. Because when I think about violence, and when women think about violence, they may think about men doing violent acts, so we're both in the same boat. I'm thinking about men doing violent acts towards me when that's happening to me. But I've also thought of violent acts being done towards me by my ex-wife, which she's done. Nearly succeeded in paying the police to put me into a Mexican prison so I'd never see the light of day again type of violence. So when I see it in any form or fashion against anyone, man, children, man, woman, child, I get sick. I get sick to the extreme, to where I don't know really what to do and how to process it. This is one I grabbed because I thought it was interesting. Someone had taken and put over mujer, they put persona, which is a person over a woman, which means that to criticize any person for having multiple sexual partners is violence. First of all, to criticize someone, to be called violence it starts to chart dangerous territory. And I'll explain in a minute, because there are a bunch of these that I grabbed that I want to talk about. Here's one that's really interesting. I grabbed all of them off the internet that I could find. This one's really interesting. We're going to talk about many of them, though. It says here, creer que es cosa de mujeres es violencia. What that means is, to believe it's just a woman's thing is violence. Okay? And I'm trying to interpret this. Maybe I'm just not seeing it. But what I interpret is, to think something is to be violent. That's what this is saying. So to assume what a man is thinking, you don't even have to know what the man is thinking. Just assume that he's thinking something bad and that it's violence, and that's violence. So men don't even have the ability to think anymore without being accused of being violent. Well, I'll tell you the truth. Men are committing a lot of violent acts. In fact, 10 women die every single day in Mexico as a result of a man killing a woman. It's not necessarily the case. I would say it's probably at least a high percentage, though. And why would I say that? Well, it's because out of the 10 women that are dying every day, there are 185. There are 185 men that are also dying as a result of violent acts. So homicide. 185 men per day are victims of homicide. But you don't hear this in the news. You don't read about it in the papers. And it's very hard to find. In fact, I had to do some clever research. I had to go and look at the total amount of homicides that occurred in Mexico last year. I had to look at the total amount of homicides that occurred towards children. And I had to look at the statistics, which were very plainly put in view about the amount of women that died every day and the amount of women that died in the year 2019 in Mexico. And it ended up being about 10% of women were the victims of violent crimes in homicide in Mexico. 5% were children. 85% men. And I started to think to myself, holy shit, why isn't anyone talking about this? Why isn't anyone bringing this up? If there are all these movements and marches happening for women, protests for children, why isn't anything being done for men? And then I'm told it's because, well, you're just another men's rights activist that's trying to take away the momentum of this movement. Wait a minute, 85% of men are the victims of homicide. And there's segregation on buses and metro. And I'm being exposed to this. And I've also been abused by my ex-wife. And I've also had my kids dangled in front of me like a carrot and stick. And this is why I've written the character that is Vicente Cajero. And I'm thinking to myself, it has nothing to do with men, women, and children, or any specific anthropological demographic as much as it has to do with violence against human beings, and a system that sustains this type of behavior by creating factions against one another. So when I read this campaign, it's clearly a campaign against men. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. To tell your couple how to dress is not taking care of them. In this case, it says taking care of her. It's violence. If I could tell you how many times my ex-wife told me what I had to wear, if I could tell you how many times at my previous employer that I left because of constructive discharge, because I had to leave because of discrimination and violence, if I could tell you how many times I was criticized for the way that I cut my hair because I simply needed to save that money so that I could travel to Mexico to see my kids that weren't coming stateside after I paid for their tickets to come to the States, after I paid for their hospitality, and a day before, my ex-wife cancels the entire thing and breaks my kid's heart and puts the entire thing on me and makes it seem like it's my fault. After all these things happened, I listened to someone tell me that my haircut isn't good because I needed to save the money for those trips that I lost. And all that time that I took off from work too. Good thing I took it off, so I got a break from that shit. But when I tell you how many times I was criticized for what I wore, and that I didn't look good, or I'd look better in this color, or I'd look better with my hair cut in a different way, it always came from women. And when I tell you that when I was getting my hair cut, men would come to me and say, "Wow, dude, that looks good. How did you do it?" And I said, well, I'm trying to save some money. I got myself my own clippers so I can cut my own hair. Wow, that's really cool. These are the conversations. Even if it didn't look good. It's because they understand why I'm saving the money. So when I see these commercials and I see these posters, you can imagine what I think. When there wasn't a single time when I asked my ex-wife, or really, I can't remember the last time I would even have asked a girlfriend. I've dated several women to wear something because it was or to change because it was too revealing, that I would be jealous. Maybe I would have been jealous in my mind, but I wouldn't have controlled the way that she dressed or commented. This whole thing with sharing photos, intimate photos, without, permission is violence. My God. The only times I've ever been shown sexts have been from women showing me what men had sent them. I swear to God. I swear to God. Am I the only one in this position? Maybe I am. Maybe I'm the outlier. Well, so be it. So be it. At this point in time, I'm really not concerned about what people think. Pressuring someone to have sex without protection, without using protection, isn't hot. It's violent. That's the translation. Presionar para tener relaciones sin protección no es calentura, es violencia, says this poster. And oh God, where do I even start here? Where do I even start? This man or woman would not be holding a condom if men were given the same options for protecting themselves as women do. What I mean by this is, if a man could take a prophylactic pill that would prevent or make him sterile, prevent him from getting a woman pregnant, they wouldn't be having this conversation. Because I'll tell you what, I myself wouldn't be having sex unless I was sure that I felt, and now I can say this, after much trial and error. Let's just follow the rules of Deepak Chopra. Don't have sex with someone who you don't believe you could become and imagine growing with. Okay? Pressuring someone to have sex without a condom, without protection, is violence, it says. I'd say not offering a pill to men since the 1960s is also a form of violence, because it forces men into situations where they have no say. Even a condom doesn't protect you from getting a woman pregnant. It has a certain percentage of protection, but it doesn't protect you. If you get a woman pregnant, do you know as a man you have no say over that life? None. It's entirely the woman's decision. There have even been cases in the United States where a woman has taken the sperm from a condom that was thrown in the bathroom in the garbage and artificially inseminated herself with it, sought out child support from that man, and won. Cases that actually exist, that are real. So you give someone the chance, a man, to take the pill, and this poster goes away. The arguments for Roe versus Wade and abortion, they go away. Because it then comes down to equal responsibility between the couples. Men aren't going to stop taking the pill until they're absolutely sure they want to have a life with this woman. But they're going to be having sex. I'll tell you that much. Because it's much more difficult for a man not to have sex, when sex is basically the only thing that we're programmed to want our entire lives. We see it in billboards, posters, commercials, and what people wear, what females wear. Yes. If we see body parts in that perfect golden mean, and we're shown this over and over again, and we have access to sex everywhere, we are going to become addicted to such things, or it's going to be very hard to remove it from our minds. Program it. It's program. It's a program. And it's a hard one to deal with. So you give us the pill, we continue having sex, we're living free until we know for sure we're ready to have kids. And then we make a mutual decision with a couple. And this poster goes away. This one, my God. To be jealous, to get jealous about your girlfriend, because that's what we're talking about here. It isn't love, it's violence. That's what it says. Celar a tu pareja no es amor, es violencia. Okay. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, who's being violent towards who? I'm seeing a man in the middle giving the dagger eyes to a man on the left. And I almost see a woman kind of laughing about this. And I'm thinking, the violence that's going to happen right here has nothing to do with a woman. It's about two guys about to fight over a woman, which is what we're taught to do through programming. Since we're really young, to compete. And I would argue this goes back into long stretches of DNA, thanks to Genghis Khan and all the others that conquered their way. But just remove all that stuff that I'm saying. The violence that's happening here is two men fighting. That 85% of homicides that happen every day that we happen to overlook. So it's saying here, don't be violent towards women. My God, don't be violent towards anyone. Don't be violent towards anyone. Don't be jealous. Don't fight. Your relationships will be more fulfilling. They'll last longer. They'll be freeing, liberating. Please. But I have to be seen in this light. I have to be seen in this light. If I walk by a man And even if I'm not noticing his girlfriend, I've been insulted just because of the way that I look, because I'm seen as a threat. I swear to God, these are the multi-levels. If I am an attractive man and I'm walking past a woman who's with a boyfriend, the boyfriend sees me and she sees me, there have been times where I've been called out just for the way that I look. And you think I'm overreacting? I'm not. And other men that have been in my situation, they know for sure. This is a situation of just pure having to eliminate violence. All right, taking photos isn't nice, it's violence. I've never done this. You know, the whole taking photos of women walking by. Have you done this? What the fuck's wrong with you? Can I just say it? Men, have you done this? What the fuck is wrong with you? Talk about trespassing. Yeah, it's not just violence, it's illegal. You should be put in jail. You should be thrown in prison. And you're disgusting. Okay? So, yeah, that's my comment on that one. To fire a woman for having kids is violence. I want more explanation with this. So a woman comes to the job and has kids, or she's having kids while at the job. I don't even understand what this means. I don't even understand. I see people getting fired all the time in Mexico for all various reasons. They're not called in and told that they're fired because they're having a kid. They're just not told they're fired. In fact, what the bosses do is they tell somebody else that's a subordinate to call in the person that they're firing to fire them. Those are the only stories that I've heard here in Mexico. They don't fire someone because you have kids. They fire you because you looked at them the wrong way. They fired you because they want their family member to take your spot. That happened to me. I worked for the government of Mexico. When I worked for the government of Mexico, I was paid, let's see, how much was it? Approximately $250 a month. After an initial contract, I was paid not much, $250 a month, which I guess is a lot in Mexico, whatever it is, but I was giving pure services to people that were incarcerated. I was helping men ages 13 to 18 so that the rates of recidivism would go down and they would have an opportunity, some sort of life outside of prison where they could feel fulfilled in doing something, that they would be socially mobile and make it. I was doing that, and I did it for over 2 years in Mexico City. And I did the same thing for females there that were incarcerated ages 13 to 18. And they came to me and they said, for the first time in my life, I feel empowered. For the first time in my life, I feel like I have a chance of doing something here and not just over. And that money went to somebody else. And I can tell you this, that program is no longer happening, but that person sure as well is getting paid, sure as hell is getting paid. But that program's not happening. So this fire a woman because she's having kids is violence? No, it's just Mexico fires whoever they want to fire because of personal interest and nepotism. And they don't give you a reason. They just fire you. They say bye-bye. If you complain like I'm complaining right now, they figure out a way to hurt you. So I put myself at risk right now by even saying these things. I put myself at risk for your education, for your way of life, so that this shit stops. This is propaganda. And it makes me sick. This here makes me so upset. Women are not going to work on Monday. You know, it says on the 9th, nobody move on the 9th. It's the National Stop Day. Not one woman in the streets, not one woman at work, not one woman at school, not one young woman at university, and not one woman buying anything on March 9th. And I think about this deeply. And I think, what's the purpose? Please tell us what the purpose is. To recognize what? I brought up the point today that 95% of the hazardous death professions in Mexico are worked by men. And if these men stopped working for, say, a week, you would notice a number of things, including the following. Your trash would not be picked up. And it would not only be smelling on Wednesday nights into Thursday day, which you'll notice in the city, it'll be every day. But you'll notice these huge rats and the biggest cockroaches in the world coming in and feasting upon your garbage that you can't get rid of because it's not being taken away by the garbage collectors who are 95% men. Suddenly you wouldn't be getting the same beautification products. They would be running scarce because this comes from the miners. These miners that are mining these special materials that are used for making beautification products. And those beautiful diamonds that go on those diamond rings. And those diamond rings, by the way, which are made of platinum, silver, and gold, are all mined by men, mostly men. And those men aren't mining it by choice because they just haven't been given the social mobility. They haven't been given the education. You know, those rooftops, they fall on their heads and they die. They get a phone call or phone calls put into the family. That stuff doesn't end up on the news. Doesn't end up on the news. And this isn't part of the 185 homicides that are happening towards men every day. You're not going to have law enforcement. You'll have 5% of law enforcement, and you're going to have people, going werewolf on the city, like the end of Joker. Yeah, that's a week with men not working in law enforcement or the military or security systems or security guards. So your data is not going to be protected. The streets aren't going to be protected. The airports aren't going to be protected. Your garbage isn't going to be removed. The sewage systems aren't going to be taken care of. They're going to get stopped up. Your water pressure is going to end. You're not going to have water filtration. Transportation is going to come to a halt. And I'm just naming a few of the things. Construction's going to stop. Let's say there's construction in the middle of the road. It's just going to stop. So I say to myself, what's the point in doing that? That's when some interesting answers come into my head. At what point do men speak up? This is the biggest question. At what point do men say, enough is enough? What is it that you're trying to tell me? Because I only want to be closer to women. I have been going through and enduring things that most men would not be able to endure. And I still am thinking to myself, how can I get closer to women? How can I convince them that my perspective is of value? What's the purpose of all this? What is violence? Violence is neglect. Neglect to offer the opportunity for a man to speak and be heard. Neglect is thinking that my life is disposable, dispensable, and otherwise subhuman. And I wonder what the world will think when they hear such things. Will they think I'm a bigot? Will they think I do not see the big picture? Will they think I deserve to be hurt rather than heard? Or should I just take it like a man? Man up. Stop being such a pussy. At what point does everyone say, holy shit, there's something really wrong here. I think we need to make some change. I think fundamentally we're really fucked up. Why is this happening? It has nothing to do with women. I'll tell you this, and I tell you every time. The reason why I'm bringing these things up has nothing to do with women and the movements and all of this active protesting. I say it's great. It's part of free assembly. Just don't be violent towards the environment and others, please. There's no sense in that. Everything is lost once you start to raise your fists. It has nothing to do with women, what's happening to men. It has everything to do with men and their inability to communicate how they feel. It has everything to do with men's inability to communicate their needs, their longing for peace and love and connection and to be heard. And I'll tell you this, the first people in this world that can bring change to that are women. Women represent the earth. Through the act alone of bringing a life into this world. And women have the capacity to receive our pain, to receive our suffering, to receive our screams and our needs to be heard, and to help us to process this without being killed. Because those who want to kill us, I'm saying men, are in large majority other men. And those are the people that I am most fearful of. I have to say, I am most fearful of men. But I am also fearful of men, if they don't start speaking up, what that's going to lead to in the future. Because men are taught to act like things are a switch. A certain threshold is reached, the switch goes on, and then big change happens. And I'm afraid of that, because I see what men do. Men are the trigger pullers of this world, and that scares me. It scares me if they don't start speaking up, and it scares me if they don't start being heard. I mean, let's just read into Vicente Cajero. Let's read into Vicente Cajero. This character wants the world to be unified. He wants solidarity. But the guy's been through a lot. He's been through a lot. He still sees the light of love in people, though he's jaded. It's been hard. And he's calloused. He has this carapace that he doesn't poke his head out for many things anymore. You know, even the slightest turbulence causes him to hide. And he's trying to come out of this in a way to say, okay, I'm ready for love. I'm ready for my children to be a bigger part of my life. I'm ready to work this out with my ex. I'm ready to make this work with my career. I'm ready to forgive and forget. I'm ready to take responsibility for all of this. And then you see him traveling the road, and it's not always aligned, those two stories, you know. The intentions aren't always aligned with the road itself. Sometimes the road is windy. And that's what we find in a story that's inspired by real events, but takes its own fictional trajectory, as it did last night. I'm going to cut off the microphone now, because if I continue speaking as we go into Scrivener, the sound is going to get garbled, and it's unfortunate, but in the same light, you've heard me speak a lot of heavy things tonight, heavy-handed stuff, and I ask that you process it with an open mind and offer me your feedback. I love feedback. In fact, I had a very powerful conversation with a woman on Facebook tonight about this, where we started off at opposition with one another and came to a point of solidarity and love and loving expression with a very hard topic. And so I'm hoping that we can continue in the same light this way, to understand where my compassion is and not to mistake that as judgment against women or judgment against men. It's just more of my concern for humanity in general, especially for our children. I need to see more couples make it. I need to see more couples be together, because it's really hard to be just a mother or a father taking care of children and providing all of the pieces. I would say it's nearly impossible, and statistics shows the same thing. The presence of a father is what's lacking more than anything else in today's age. And I would say if you're a woman and let's say you're a single mom, please do everything that you can within your power to nurture the relationship between the father of your children and your children. Do everything that you can, because that is absolutely important for their development. And if you happen to start a new relationship and the person that you're with has that type of image or they're a father themselves and they know how to offer that type of unconditional love to your own child, to open up the channels to them. To open up the channels. Because that in itself too can be very, very therapeutic and effective for the child that's growing up. It's to encourage the relationships. I can't stress that enough. Encourage those relationships and understand that the paternal presence is much different than the maternal presence and vice versa. That both of the components are extremely necessary for the proper development of a child. Even more important before they turn 12. Once 12 happens, Kabbalistically, there's a lot of change. The mold is sort of formed. But really any time in life is important to have that presence and the demonstration of love between two people. And that they're humans, that they have their own lives. But at any moment in time, they can turn on that switch and be parent and help. That's really important. I stress that. Okay. We're going to go off channel now. And once again, we're talking about solidarity today. This is about the oneness, the commonalities. And understanding that we need to see perspective. I'm trying to give perspective. That 85% of the homicides in this country count for something. The 95% of the workers in this country doing very hard, dangerous, death-defying work is worth recognition and not spite. Okay? Okay. I'm going to shut off my microphone now, and we're going to dive into this book for as long as it goes. All right, that's where we're leaving things tonight. It's a lot of talk, a lot of work, a lot of emotions. And I'm just about exhausted the resources that I want to use tonight. We're moving along. We're moving along. Anyway, thanks for tuning in tonight. And before I end, I just want to make a few things very clear. What I talked about in the beginning of the night in regards to the happenings of this weekend in Mexico City, it's all important. And it's important for people to not feel their belief systems are shattered, but rather to understand that there is a direction in which we're moving that's going to require correction at one point or a time or another. It's going to require correction. How soon that comes, I'm not sure. I would rather the correction be gradual and peaceful. Because we as a society, in particular, men and women in Mexico City, are creating this unbelievable void, this distance between one another, and that's not the natural way. There is a reason why tons of oxytocin gets released just by holding hands, giving a hug, being close and present with someone. And I encourage you to foster this loving connection with as many people as you can. Don't do it as much as Vicente Cajero. Just kidding. You know, all of these books, I'm going to give you a secret. If you're listening and watching right now, as things expand and change in the future, because they will, the way I look at it this way is the rate at which I write versus the amount of time I will be left on this earth leads to the possibility of my books becoming known, because there will be a number of them. I don't ever see myself hitting a point of writer's block or feeling like this skill will be restricted in some way, because it's never happened with music, and I treat this the same way as writing songs. So I've been writing songs for over 20 years, never had writer's block. I don't imagine it happening with books, which means there will be a large amount of material released, which means the likelihood of me being quote-unquote discovered is very high. So what this means is you now know early on, because you're watching this now, that every single book I write is part of the same series. Every single book has some thread, some link to another. And it's largely based on game theory. So if you want to know who's really writing this book, the big secret, it's an immortal person. This person finds himself wandering through multiple books. And I hope that you discover who he is in time. Well, it's been a very wonderful night. I have to say wonderful because it's been a great opportunity for me to let go of some big things that have been on my mind, to talk about some issues that are going on here in the Republic of Mexico, and to dive into some good solid editing. We've got a lot done tonight, and I'm not even going to show you how far this book goes, but as far as the remaining chapters, we probably got a good 40 chapters left. This is a big book. So by the time things are done with this book, I'll tell you what the total page count or the total word count is. Just bear with me a second. Let's look at the project statistics as it calculates here. All right, it's calculating the word count. We're looking at a total of, wait for it, it's calculating. We're looking at a total of, come on, Scrivener, you can do it. The more words there are, the longer this takes to calculate. So I can promise you it's going to be, what? It didn't even, it like crashed. Anyway, all this is to say, we got a big project ahead of us. And so, thank you for being part of this. Well, anyway, have a wonderful evening. This has been fun. And remember, if you liked what you saw this evening, if you appreciated the material, if you like that we're talking about things that other people are afraid to talk about, then do me a favor and click in the bottom right there. There's this little subscribe button. You'll see it pop up here in just a second. And there it is. Click that subscribe button and be part of the stream forever. Once you check out, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Just kidding. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks for watching. Be well. Remember, love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor. It's no joke.